Today's video is on the Epaulette mate. So the Epaulette mate is where two adjacent squares to the king have other pieces on them, and so he can't get away on those squares, and then the other ranks are cut off. So let's jump into an example, and then we'll jump into the actual puzzles. Here we can see two rooks cutting off the other squares, some random pieces. Sometimes they could be your pieces, sometimes they're your opponents, but they are cutting off the king's adjacent squares. And so now all we have to do is deliver checkmate. Now, this is a check, but that would mean the rook's not looking at these two squares. So where's the checkmate? This square. So these are covered by the rook, and the rook defends the bishop. The other rook cuts these ones off, and the two squares on the side are random pieces in them. All right, let's jump into some puzzles, see how we do. So the Epaulette mate, how do you kind of solve this puzzle? Let's go through some of the ideas. Always, the king will be blocked in by his own pieces. When you solve any puzzle, you want to look for checks, captures, or threats. And so in this puzzle, I'm only seeing one check. That's bringing the rook here. Okay, so we always look for checks first. Now we can see once we bring the rook here, we actually hit all these squares. So the king has nowhere to go that way. The rook also covers these squares. The pawn is defending that square, so the rook can't be taken. This pawn is covering this square, and this rook is covering this square. And so really the only squares that we haven't got circles around are the two where pieces are already occupying. And so this is why it's the Epaulette mate. Pieces are already on those adjacent squares to the king. Rook, f7, checkmate. All right, easy puzzle number 2. This one's actually fairly simple. I can already see it. Pause if you'd like. All right, it's queen check on g5. And here you can see the king is blocked by his own pieces. The queen covers these, the bishop covers these, and the pawn covers here. So everything is covered, and his own pieces cover the adjacent squares. Even though the queen actually could cover both of these as well, it's still an Epaulette mate. All right, let's go to easy puzzle number 3. Pause if you'd like. This one is a checkmate in 2, and a little trickier because we can't get a piece here immediately to, checkmate the king with the two pieces beside him, but we can actually use one of our pieces to be one of the pieces beside the king. And so now the king is forced up here, and our piece is here, the opponent's piece is here. And can we deliver a checkmate here? We can't, because the pawn would be able to take us, but we can deliver the checkmate on g5. All right, let's jump onto some medium difficulty. Pause the video if you'd like. This one's a little trickier. It's maybe a little more difficult to see exactly where those adjacent pieces are to the king, but I'm identifying them as these two. So I think first we're going to sacrifice the rook, give him a check, and that forces the king up. So when you're looking for these checkmates, always look for the most forcing moves. Now we can deliver a check here, and the king is forced back or forced over. And if he had gone over, this would have been a checkmate here, because the king couldn't come back this way or this way, and he's blocked in by his own pieces. So this would have been an Epaulette mate. And actually, I suppose this is a different Epaulette mate. So I'm guessing it's just rook here and then check here. And I guess eventually the king will go here and we'll be able to take here. So it's just taking a wee bit longer, but that is interesting. That was a very long checkmate, but it still is an Epaulette checkmate. All right, medium puzzle number 2 here. Pause if you'd like. This one's pretty interesting. I can see the most forcing move in the position is bishop checks here on g4. And it looks like checkmate because the king can't go out this way and can't kill the bishop, but the rook can kill the bishop. So check here, rook kills. And which pawn do we take with checking the king? Well, if you take with this pawn, then the king can actually run down here and run over here, and he's going to get away. But if we take with this pawn, then we actually can check and probably checkmate there, I think. Yeah, because the king's going to be on g5. Okay, so check, 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 checkmate. Nice. All right, medium puzzle number 3. This one's actually quite simple. You might think knight h6, checking the king's forced into the corner. But then there's no real way of opening the king up. We can't really take here, he comes here and our knight's hanging here. The solution's much simpler if you can find the queen sacrifice. Queen takes g7, check, and rook g4 checkmate, because the knight, oh, it wasn't a checkmate, but the knight holds the other squares. So the rook cuts these ones and these ones are cut, and this rook defends the knight. Pretty beautiful, actually. All right, let's jump onto some harder puzzles. Pause if you need. Okay, I think I can already see the solution. Check here with the knight. The king has no squares to go to. The bishop has to take, and that's a checkmate with the rook. I don't know why that's a harder puzzle. It looked pretty simple, but we do have the Epaulette mate because the pieces are blocking him in, and the pawns thankfully cover everything, and so that king is cooked. All right, hard puzzle number 2. Okay, I see a check here with the queen. King has to come to this square. I would say knight here, forking the king and queen. He takes, and then there's the check with the mate, because the pawn, these pieces here are cutting the adjacent squares of the king. That's a nice mate. Check, check, and checkmate. All right, hard puzzle number 3. This king seems quite in the open, but there should be a way to do this. Let's see, we have a check here, and that covers everything except this square. And those look like some pieces that are cutting off the king, and the pawn is cutting off these ones. And so how do we cut off the rest of these squares here? Well, we could just put the queen here, but then he blocks with his queen, and then we checkmate with the rook. Pretty beautiful finish. Check, check, checkmate. Nice. All right, let's jump onto the hardest difficulty. And if you've enjoyed these puzzles, do check out the link in the description of the video where I'll give you a free Noctie study. You can just make an account on there for free and you can solve 10 puzzles that I have hand-picked myself. And let me know in the comments if you're able to solve them. All right, the hardest puzzle. I'm looking at this check because it seems the most forcing. King has to go to this square. But then how do we check him here? Is it just rook here? That does not seem that difficult. Let's try another one. Yeah, I think this one is much more difficult. Pause the video and take some time to solve this because I think this one's pretty beautiful. So this puzzle's, I think this move is kind of disgusting to find. Maybe if you sit here for a while and try to solve it. This took me several minutes to find, but the move is rook b7. And you might say, well, what if he takes the queen? Well, then we just have a checkmate here because we're threatening a box mate, so he can't really take this. And so if we go here, can the queen take? No, because he's pinned. And so when we check here, the king has to take. And if the king takes, then we go check here and he's forced back and we can take the queen with checkmate. And it's an Epaulette mate because he's stuck in by his own pieces. So I think that's the move. All right, well, so he could promote. That's just a waiting move. And now he's going to take. Yeah, now he takes. And then we check. And that's the puzzle solved. Happy days, I was right. Hope you enjoyed. Do check out the link in the description of the video. If you can, do leave a like on this video because these videos don't get very many views. So would appreciate it. It does help the algorithm to think that it's good content. Bye for now.